Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty Show live recap week number 8. We are coming back from the dead. And we are going to get things going, talking about Jaden Daniels, some tight ends who haven't produced lately, and Dak Prescott. Maybe, just maybe, he's back from the dead. CD definitely wasn't last night. He definitely wasn't dead. I mean, he has been live and well all season long, and it was his time to show us last night. But the Cowboys couldn't pull it off. They are truly, truly in trouble. Cowboys have not been able to put it together last night. They were trying to do the comeback. Dak did his best, but unfortunately, all he could do was make it a somewhat close game. They had been trailing 27-10 in the fourth quarter, came back to make it 30-24 and had the ball, but couldn't quite pull it off. Now, CD still ended up with, what was it? Oh, what did he end up with last night? 14 catches. Oh, let me bring up the numbers here for you. Where is it? Boy, they don't make it easy for you to find here. Okay, there we go. We've got the stats here for you. All right, let's just go ahead and bring it right up so you guys can see. There we are. We've got CeeDee Lamb, 17 targets, 13 catches, 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. Monster day for CeeDee Lamb. Dak, on the other hand, 25 of 38, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. So where are we at with Dak and the Cowboys? I don't know, but CeeDee, good to have you back in the house. And my dynasty teams enjoyed it. Yes. All right. Let's get into the special day it was. And that is National Tight End Day, brought to you by George Kittle. Yes, Mr. Kittle started it. He went 6 for 128 and a touchdown on his special day. And just so you all know it, the tight ends yesterday put up the most tight end receptions on any single given day ever. Yes, it was nuts. And I got to say, I mean, I'm glad to see it, because early on this season, we thought they were just, we thought it was the non-tight end revolution. I mean, they had done nothing through the first 3-4 weeks of this year, to the point where, like, I was literally just taking the tight end premium off of the keep trade cut calculator. I'm just trying to mess with the sound effects in the background. Thanks to Licht. Yes. All right. So let's get back into the numbers here. We've got Brock Purdy going off. He had 260 yards, touchdown on the ground, 56 yards to add to it. So he had a big day despite only the one touchdown pass. Not as big as Jalen Hurts, but we'll get to that later. But Brock had a good game, distributing the ball well. You can see here, Debo had just 4 catches for 71 yards, had that big 47-yarder beginning of the game. But man, what a game that was last night. Jake Ferguson, let's see here. Jake Ferguson, just 6 catches for 23 yards only. Had that fumble that he recovered, though. Ricky Pearsall, in his first full action here with Brandon Ayuk out, was 4 for 38. I think that's what you could pretty well get used to seeing. Did have the big 39-yard run, so he got involved on the ground as well. So that Niners offense was humming with Isaiah Guerrero taking over for the injured Jordan Mason. 14 for 85 and a touchdown. He looked strong. I mean, he's bigger than I thought. And I had watched him at Wisconsin, but I guess the big lineman there just dwarfed him. Now, keep in mind, Isaiah Guerrero is not going to be the hot waiver pickup because the Niners have a bye next week. So there's no need to go out and blow your fab on Isaiah Guerrero. The Niners will have a bye, and then Christian McCaffrey, yes, CMC, he is looking to come back from the dead. Week 10, when he takes on my Buccaneers. Will my Buccaneers be ready? Will they be ready for the CMC factory? We shall see. But that's 2 weeks away. My Buccaneers this week, well, how do I put it? How do I put it lightly? We wore the creamsicles. Yes, I've got the old creamsicle Mike Alstott on here, and you know what? I don't like the creamsicles. We don't do well in them. All right, no other way to put it. Last year we got destroyed by Detroit in them. This year, it was the Kyle Pitts show. Yes, folks, Kyle Pitts is truly back from the dead. Kirk Cousins loves this man. And I got to say, I'm beginning to love him too. 2 touchdowns on the day for Kyle Pitts. It was, he almost didn't get the second touchdown. Like, he lazily walked across the goal line, and Antonio Winfield didn't give up. And he came up from behind, almost knocked the ball out in time, but they reviewed it, ruled a touchdown. So Kyle Pitts ends up with 2 touchdowns, 91 yards receiving from 4 catches. Big day for Mr. Kyle Pitts. Let's bring up the stats for you here from my Bucks Falcons matchup. Here we go. All right, there they are. So Kirk Cousins, 23 of 29, 276, 4 touchdowns, no picks. If Cousins could play the Buccaneers every week, he would be more than happy to, because it is just a shit show for defense with Tampa right now. Now we're talking going back the last 3 games. We've got the Falcons game on Thursday night, and there was one game in between there. So last 4 weeks. But anyway, 4 weeks ago, Cousins lit us up for 500 yards on Thursday night. And yesterday, 4 touchdown passes. Just last week, it was 5 touchdowns from Lamar Jackson. Start the quarterbacks against Tampa. Yes. Baker Mayfield on the other side tried his best. 330, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks without his top 2 options, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Evans will be back. Hopefully by week 12, the Bucs have a bye in week 11. So look for Evans to be out next week against the Chiefs and the following game against the Niners. Then the bye, and then hopefully Evans is back there. I believe he will be. They would have put him on IR prior to yesterday's game if he wasn't going to be back. So look for Evans to actually be back. Chris Godwin, though, hopefully you were able to get rid of your shares of him in your contending leagues for this week. If not, continue trying hard this week. There's still a little value there in Chris Godwin's name value of having a good seasons up until this point. So you should still be able to get at least something for him, some kind of contending piece, older vet wide receiver, unless you're looking to work him into some kind of package where you give a first. I was able to do that to get Devonta Smith, and Devonta paid off for me. Back to the Buccaneers, though, their rushing game. Bucky Irving led the way this week, 9 for 44 on the ground. He had a monster day through the air, 7 for 40. Rashad White, 6 for 29 on the ground, did get a touchdown through the air on 38 yards from 5 catches. So decent day for the Bucs backs. Sean Tucker didn't do much, though. Didn't get many touches, so he looks to be the third wheel, and he'll only get some work if there's another injury to Rashad White or Bucky Irving. As for the Bucs receivers, many were speculating who it would be: Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, or Trey Palmer. Well, guess again, it was National Tight End Day, and that meant it was Cade Otton, beast mode, 9 for 81 and 2 touchdowns with the Gronk spikes. It was exciting to see Cade Otton bust out. But again, the Bucs' effort fell just short, 31-26 to the Falcons. On the Falcons side of things, Bijan had a quiet day on the ground, 13 for 63. Did get 6 catches for 37 yards to save his day through the air. Darnell Mooney, 5 for 92 and a touchdown, just a thorn in the Bucs' side of both games this year. Drake London only 4 for 34 this week, but don't be discouraged there with Drake London. All right, let's get on out of my misery with the Bucs game. Let's get over to the aforementioned Jalen Hurts and his monster performance. There we go. Bring it right up for you. There we go. Jalen Hurts, 3 touchdowns on the ground on 37 yards. Through the air, didn't have to do much. 236 with a touchdown to Devonta Smith at 45-yarder. Devonta finished with 6 for 85 on the day. A.J. Brown, 5 for 84. And Dallas Goedert was out, but Grant Calcaterra did get 3 for 58, contributing to National Tight End Day. That's right. Over to the Bengals side, who couldn't just get things going. We had Joe Burrow, 234 in the air, touchdown and a pick. Chase Brown led the way on the ground, 32 yards and a touchdown. Zach Moss, only 5 carries for 11 yards. So it looks like it's Chase Brown's backfield for the time being. Zach Moss did have 4 catches for 28 yards, so he's not totally irrelevant. It just looks like, Chase Brown's gotten the work on the goal line the last few weeks. So that used to be Zach Moss's calling card, at least, but not anymore. So I would say it's like a 60-40 split towards Chase Brown now. Now, what that means for me and my Chase Brown shares is he's a safe RB2 start. At least a flex for sure. Through the air, the Bengals were without T. Higgins. Higgins, a late scratch. He was questionable all week, but let's bring up T. Higgins quickly, see what his story is there. Without T, Jamar Chase led the way 9 for 54. Actually, Mike Gesicki, of course, on National Tight End Day, 7 for 73. Can't miss the tight ends. Jamar Chase had 9 for 54 and that one touchdown. It was a 2-yarder. But back to T. Higgins. Let's bring him up for y'all. Let's do it this way. Here we go. So T. Higgins, his quads, that's what it is. So being that T was questionable for this week, I would expect him to be back in the lineup next week for the Bengals. Bengals do take on, let's see here, scroll down a little. Bengals next week, they get Las Vegas. So should be a exciting game for the Bengals offense taking on the Raiders. Yes. And about those Raiders, let's talk about them. They took on the Chiefs in a late Sunday bash. And we'll bring that one up right now for y'all. Here we go. Let's get over to it for you. There it is. All right. So Chiefs win 27-20. Move on to 7-0. Raiders gave it a good shot, but couldn't quite pull out the victory there. Gardner Minshew, 24-30, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. So Gardner definitely tried his best, but they couldn't get the ground game going. Alexander Mattison, 14 carries for just 15 yards. Zamir White is a mere afterthought. So all of you who did not get out on Zamir White when told you to, sorry, but it's too late. Brock Bowers on National Tight End Day, 5 for 58, leading the way for the Raiders. Yardage-wise, Jacoby Myers had 52 on 6 catches. Alexander Mattison did add 5 catches for 29 yards there. With Devontae Adams out of town, some thought Trey Tucker might step it up. Tucker went 2 for 26, added a carry for 7. Over to the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, not a terrible day. 262, 2 touchdowns, did have an interception. Kareem Hunt with a touchdown on the ground, 59 yards. But it is Travis Kelce we want to talk about here. 10 for 90 and a touchdown for Mr. Kelce. Whew. I'm glad I hung on to him. For all of you out there who got rid of your Travis Kelce shares, just because it started off rough, I feel for you, especially if you were contending. Now, depending on what you got for him, which I'm doubting was a whole lot if you got rid of him first 3 weeks of the season. These last few games, he has just been hyper targeted. Last few weeks for Travis Kelce have just been monsters. He, again, 10 for 90 and a touchdown this week. Over the last few weeks, let's bring him up here for you. There's Mr. Kelce. All right. Scroll down. There we go. All right. Over the last few weeks, did have just 4 for 37 last week, but before that, he was 9 for 70 and 7 for 89 prior to that. So Kelce is back in the groove for the Chiefs. And just again, a reminder that the tight ends are back this year. So what does this mean for the landscape? I mean, who do we have up top? It's got to still be Brock Bowers, I would say. Well, dynasty-wise. Season long with Ayuk being out, even with CMC probably coming back, I'd still have to lean George Kittle tight end number one, just because the Niners offense is so much more potent than the Raiders offense, meaning that Kittle's going to get into the end zone and have those big spike weeks. And I mean, Kittle's well onto his way to having over 1,000 yards this year. I don't know if he can break the tight end record, but he's on his way to a monster year. So go out and try and kick the tires on a George Kittle owner if he is not contending now. At this point in the year, you really have to decide to go one way or the other in Dynasty. I know that some of you have some fringe playoff teams, but really look at those fringe playoff teams. Do you have injuries? Are you a fringe playoff team because of bad luck? If you're a fringe playoff team because of bad luck, it depends what kind of bad luck. Like, did you have Chris Godwin bad luck, or did you have Mike Evans bad luck? Did you have Brandon Ayuk bad luck, or Christian McCaffrey bad luck? All right. So if your guys are coming back this year, then there's hope. If you're on the fringe, I don't mind making a move to bolster your chances to win. But if you're on the fringe of the playoffs and you've had some season-ending injuries, don't go out there wasting your first round pick on somebody to plug a hole, because what if that doesn't work? If that doesn't work, then you're giving up a early to mid first round pick for the person that you're using to plug the hole with. So that isn't good Dynasty. Good Dynasty is checking out your team in relation to the rest of the teams in your league. Are you in the middle and your league is stacked with like 3, maybe 4 teams, 4 super teams at the top? It's hard to have 4 super teams, but let's say there's just 2 super teams, right, that are totally stacked. And then there's a kind of a mess of 5 teams in the next tier. All right. Do you want to be in that mess of 5 teams, or do you want to try and get ahead of those teams for next season? If you want to get ahead of those teams for next season, now would be the time to trade one of your contending pieces to them for their first, because just because they're right in the mix or barely making the playoffs right now doesn't mean they're even going to get into the playoffs. They could sustain another injury or two. I mean, with the amount of injuries that have gone on this season, you can expect that you're not going to endure some injuries the rest of the way. So the only teams I totally feel comfortable with making trades that are reassuring on them are teams that are in the top 3 of the standings right now. So, and as long as those aren't all completely gotten there by luck either. All right, let's move on to the next game. Let's go back to here we go. Let's bring up one of the early games here. One of the early surprises, somebody at work asked me who I would have picked in my survivor pool between Baltimore or Cleveland. And when I thought about it, Baltimore or Detroit, sorry. Who would I have picked in my survivor pool, Baltimore or Detroit? Now, when I looked at it from one end, yeah, you want to take Lamar before he gets hurt. You want to get Baltimore out of the way on what looked to be a sure win against Cleveland, or Detroit going up against a Titans team that's just been absolutely putrid. Well, hopefully you didn't take Baltimore, because as we can see here, Browns and Jameis Winston came back. And what I told the guy at work was go with Detroit because of this guy, Jameis Winston. Winston had, 27, 41, 334, 3 touchdowns, no picks for Jameis. And if this is what's going to happen the rest of the way for the Cleveland Browns, man, try and get a piece of them. Elijah Moore is probably out on waivers in some of those leagues, some of your leagues. I tried to go and acquire him, but he was already picked up in most of my dynasty leagues. So a lot of the leagues I'm in, the guys were still hanging on to that last glimmer of hope with Elijah Moore. And as you can see here, 8 for 85 for Elijah Moore. Jameis Winston likes him. And that's good for Elijah Moore going forward. Cedric Tillman, many thought was a flash in the pan last week. Well, not so much. 7 for 99, 2 touchdowns here. Monster day for Tillman. The secret's out. It's already out of the bag. Now, this week will be an interesting week for Tillman. There'll be many teams looking to dump him because they're still not believing. So if you need a 5th or 6th wide receiver, you could do worse than Cedric Tillman right now. Back over to the tight end position. David Njoku, 5 for 61, got in the end zone. Over to the Baltimore side of things, Mark Andrews got in the end zone again, 5 for 36. Andrews has resurged, so hopefully you didn't drop him like I did in one of my redraft leagues. I don't mind it because I had Tucker Kraft, so I had to make a decision. Just went with Tucker Kraft. I'm not kicking myself for it because I didn't want to have that decision of Kraft or Andrews every week. But somebody else in my league doesn't mind it because they now have Mark Andrews, and he's producing. Zay Flowers got 7 for 115 through the air. Isaiah Likely added 4 for 47. So Lamar finished the day with 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. No interceptions. Derrick Henry, 11 for 73 and a touchdown, just 11 rushing attempts, though. So it shows how the game flow went. Ravens weren't really able to get the ground game going against their divisional rivals. That was another reason that I said lean towards the Lions over taking Baltimore. Just when you're going against a division rival, regardless of record, they know your play tendencies. They know what plays you tend to call on 3rd and short, 3rd and long. Your player personnel, they know it better. So Tennessee, they hadn't played Detroit in probably 4 years. Okay. But the Cleveland Browns get to take on the Ravens twice a year. So they've played them 8 times in the last 4 years, or they will play them 8 times in the last 4 years. So just keep that in mind if you are in any survivor pools going forward. All right. Lamar did add 46 yards on the ground, didn't get in the end zone, but still had a decent afternoon for you. What else can we know? Nick Chubb did get 52 yards on 16 carries, so he looks to be back and decent. I mean, it was only a 3.3 yard average, but still, he's there. You can plug him in. If you play light on the running back side, he's not a bad guy to go out and acquire on the cheap in Dynasty. You should be able to get him very cheap now. Let's talk about that Detroit game here. Woo-wee. I thought it'd be a good day for the Lions. I didn't know it was going to be this good. Khalif Raymond had a day. Now, if you haven't checked out any of Dan Campbell's post-game game ball speeches, go check this week's out because gave out a game ball to his special teams coach as well as Khalif Raymond. Raymond here, all you see here is 2 for 14 and a touchdown, but he almost broke the punt return yardage record seeing as the Titans had to punt so much, it's not that surprising. But the Titans had to punt so much. Khalif Raymond had a 90-yard punt return for a touchdown. Also had he ended up with 190 total yards on punt returns. Again, just 19 yards short of the record. Sam Laporta back in a big way, 6 for 48 and a touchdown. Caught the touchdown pass from David Montgomery, of all people. So that's twice now this year that the Lions have used trickery to get Laporta into the end zone. They did it against the Cowboys earlier this year. Brock Wright got into the end zone. Amon-Ra, not a big day, but did get a touchdown, 2 for 7 through the air. Jahmyr Gibbs added a grab for 6 yards. He did bust off a 70-yard rushing touchdown to finish with 127 yards on the day. David Montgomery added to his throwing touchdown, got in the end zone, just 33 yards, but still had quite a day fantasy-wise. Over to the Titans, it was all Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley back from the dead. Yes. His first game without DeAndre Hopkins and Mason Rudolph at the helm. I don't know. Mason Rudolph doesn't look too bad. I know they lost 52-14, but who knows what it could have been if Will Levis was throwing the ball around the yard. Tony Pollard, decent day, 20 for 94. Can't complain about that. Added 3 for 23 through the air, so a solid day for Tony Pollard. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, 2 for 39 and a touchdown. So those are your guys from Tennessee. And it'll be interesting to see next week if it's Mason Rudolph or if it's back to the Will Levis show. Yikes. That'd be scary. All right. What else we got here? Earlier in the day, here we go. We got the Cardinals and Dolphins and the return of Tagovailoa. And unfortunately, Cardinals won this one at the gun on a field goal. There was a safety involved there. That's how they got to 28 the hard way. Kyler Murray, 300 yards on the day, hooked up with Marvin Harrison for a touchdown. Marv got over 100 yards on 6 catches, 111 yards he finished with. Trey McBride, though, told you it was National Tight End Day, 9 for 124. So Kyler finally got the passing game going and helped lead the Cardinals to victory, evening their record at 4-4 in that tough NFC West where everybody is just jumbled up. 3 teams at 4-4 and the Rams at 3-4 hanging around. So Cardinals offense finally back. James Conner added 53 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Michael Wilson, 5 for 31 and a touchdown. And Conner added 16 yards and 2 catches through the air. Over to the Dolphins side of things, monster day for the running backs here. Von Achane, 10 for 97, had a 47-yarder. Raheem Mostert, 2 touchdowns on the ground, only 19 yards, but those 2 touchdowns saved him. Tyreek, definitely happy to see Tua back. Did only have 6 for 72, but things are looking up for the Dolphins players. If you're able to go out and get them, now is the time. You got to see that Tua's back. You still maybe have a little bit of a window because Tyreek and Waddle didn't blow up this week, first game back with Tua. So you might still be able to acquire Tyreek or Waddle in your leagues. Waddle just had 4 for 45. Achane, though, added 6 for 50 and a touchdown through the air. So had almost 150 total yards on the day with the touchdown. So Achane is back, and those are exciting things. Tua finished the day 28 of 38 for 234 and touchdown. All right. Now, I am not a Tua lover. I do not have him in any of my dynasty leagues. The concussion thing just scares me too much. To lose that much value with potentially one hit, I don't want to. That's not something I want to invest in. Something I would want to invest in, though, is Drake May here. Ooh, it was a rough day for him. He went out with a concussion, but he wasn't looking terrible before that. Had a touchdown on the ground, 3 for 46 on the ground. So he got knocked out in I think it was the second quarter, maybe near the end of the first quarter. So monitor that this week. Jacoby Brissett came in, took over, and led them on a game-winning drive to get the game-winning touchdown with, I think it was under 10 seconds to go on 4th and goal from the 1. Gave it to Ramondre Stevenson, who finished the day with 2 touchdowns, won the game winner. Only 48 yards on 20 carries for Ramondre, 3 for 17 through the air. Hunter Henry continuing his decent performance, 5 for 45. Again, I look for Henry to continue to be, as long as May is in there, look for Henry to continue to be a top 12 tight end option the rest of the way, somebody you can definitely get on the cheap in Dynasty for you to plug a gap if need be. Aaron Rodgers, I don't know. Ask Aaron Rodgers what he thinks about getting a top 5 draft pick next season, how that'll add and bolster the Jets' attack. See what he says. Aaron Rodgers, 17 for 28, 233, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Breece Hall, 16 for 80 on the ground. Braylon Allen, just 12 for 32. Through the air, Garrett Wilson led the way, 5 for 113. Devontae Adams, 4 for 54. Tyler Conklin getting into the end zone on tight end day, 3 for 42 with the touchdown. And not much else going for the Jets. What can I say? It was just a game that the Jets felt they needed to win and did not come through. So it should be an interesting week there in New York. Let's head over to the Packers-Jacksonville game where we have a big injury here, and that's to Jordan Love. It's his groin, though, not his knee. Many thought it was his knee, but it was just his groin. So groin injuries usually don't last that long. Expect Love to be back running the show next week. Before he went out, he was just 14 of 22 for a 196, no touchdowns and an interception. So not a great day there for Love. Josh Jacobs, though, picked up the slack, 127 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground for Jacobs. Tucker Kraft added a touchdown through the air, 3 for 78 for Tucker. 67-yarder, built that yardage total up. They spread the ball around the rest of the way, though, for Green Bay. Jaden Reed did have the big 51-yarder from Malik Willis near the end there in the fourth quarter to get them down into field goal range and kick the chip shot game winner from Brandon McManus. Over to the Jags side, not a terrible day offensively. Of course, they didn't get the job done in the end, but 308 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick for T-Law. Tank Bigsby, 78 yards and 18 carries, so not bad on the ground. T-Law did get into the end zone on a 6-yard scamper. Brian Thomas, once again, here he is. 3 for 60 and a touchdown through the air. Christian Kirk left with an injury. He just had 2 for 59. Brennan Strange stepping up for Evan Ingram. 5 for 59 for Strange. Ingram only 4 for 36. Did get in the end zone, though. Let me check Evan Ingram out here. I don't know if he left with an injury or if it was just that T-Law was finding. Yeah, it doesn't look like he's hurt, so that's good for Evan Ingram owners. At least that he's not hurt. So I wouldn't worry about Strange's production there. Ingram's still the man going forward. I would still consider him easily a top 10 tight end the rest of the way, possibly even top 5. All right. Let's head over to Houston, where we had the Colts traveling to see the Houston Texans. And here the Texans pulled this one out 23-20. Anthony Richardson. Ugh. I don't know what to think with Anthony Richardson here. 6 for 45 on the ground. I don't know if that's enough to offset the just putrid passing line. I mean, he's totally saved by the 69-yard touchdown to Josh Downs here. I don't want to say, well, if he didn't have that, look at what his yards, but if he didn't have that, look at what his yardage total would be. I mean, 10 for 32 for 175 yards, a touchdown and a pick. I mean, there was a point there where he was running around so much. He ran around 3 plays in a row. He had to tap himself out and have Joe Flacco come in for a play to hand the ball off to JT. JT back in action, 105 yards and a touchdown on the ground, looking good. But, this Colts offense, it is borderline time to ask themselves the question if Joe Flacco should come in. The offense just seems to be clicking better with Flacco in there. Now, it is, Richardson only played 4 games last year. And one of those was 1 quarter. Another one was only 2 quarters. So really only barely 3 total games last season. Josh Allen struggled his first couple of years in the league. So they cannot give up on him. They invested the number, 3 overall pick in this guy. Those people calling for Joe Flacco, is Joe Flacco really going to lead this team to the Super Bowl? That's the question. The Colts have to really look deep down into their soul and ask, is Joe Flacco going to lead this team to the Super Bowl? Because if the answer is no, or the answer is probably not, you got to stick it out with Richardson. He's got to get this game experience. All right. He can't get the type of experience by just sitting there watching Joe Flacco play. That's not going to do Anthony Richardson any good. He's got to be out there. He's got to be playing. He's got to try and get better, get more accurate, get more comfortable in the pocket, and progress as a passer, because this was just a rough one. On the Houston side of the ball, C.J. Stroud looked decent, 285 and a touchdown, no picks. Joe Mixon getting over 100 yards and a touchdown again. Stephon Diggs led the way for the Texans, 5 for 81. Dalton Schultz, 4 for 52. And Tank Dell getting the touchdown on 35 yards. Now, this offense for the Texans, considering Nico Collins has been out the last couple of games, so it's been 3 games now. Got to sit through one more. Those of you who are also Nico Collins owners, I've got him in a few redrafts. I'm just patiently waiting, and Nico's going to be coming back. It's almost time. One more game. I've got to wait. One more game. So the Texans sitting at 6-2 without Nico Collins. Got to be happy with the results so far, because 6-2 at this point is pretty solid record-wise. All right. What game have we missed? Do we even want to talk about the Saints-Chargers? Is that even a game to mention anything? Okay. Yes, it is, because Ladd McConkey was a beast. He might end up burning me in my big league, but I got to mention the guy had a big 60-yard catch and run where he faked out. He ran through the whole Saints secondary on that one. Finished the day with 6 for 111 and 2 touchdowns because he added another 9-yarder later on just to put the nail in the coffin for anybody going up against Ladd McConkey. Check out the quarterbacks. I just want to see what Herbert finished at here. Herbert, 279, 2 touchdowns, no picks through the air, so a very solid afternoon for Herbert. Dobbins added 57 and a touchdown on the ground. Not much else going on. Will Dissly, 5 for 41, for those of you who had to plug him in. Not a bad tight end plug there. Passing-wise, Spencer Rattler, 12 for 24, 156. And Jake Haener getting in there. Let me see what happened to Rattler. Did they just bench him? I really wasn't paying attention. Yeah, he was pulled. So not looking good on the Spencer Rattler end of things there. Jake Haener came in 9 for 17, 122. So not a whole lot better there as the Saints were only able to muster up 8 points. 2 of them were on a safety. It was a ugly 2-0 lead there for the Saints. And the Chargers came back with a 3-run homer in the bottom of the 5th to make it 3-2, and then dominated the rest of the way. Alvin Kamara, just 10 carries, 67 yards on the ground. Did add 6 for 55 through the air. Chris Olave looking decent on his way back from dealing with concussions. 8 for 105. So in spite of the merry-go-round at quarterback, Chris Olave is getting the targets necessary to produce. Bub means he is now an afterthought, just 1 for 36 on the day. All right. Let's see what else we've got here before we finish things off here today for you guys. Look forward to Monday night's game. We've got Buffalo, Seattle. Seahawks, of course, without DK, and it showed. Geno Smith with a rough one, 21 of 29, no touchdowns and a pick. Kenneth Walker struggled all day and just 9 carries for 12 yards. Charbonnet, 3 for 4, did fall into the end zone at the end there. JSN trying to lead the way for the receiving core there without DK, just 6 for 69. Tyler Lockett was absent, only 1 catch for 9 yards. Walker did add 4 for 33 to try and salvage his day. Noah Fant was not a big believer in National Tight End Day as he only got 3 for 22. Over to the Bills side, though, they didn't have any problems. Josh Allen, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick through the air. Added 25 yards on the ground. James Cook was cooking, 111 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Added 3 for 22 through the air. The touchdown passes from Allen went to Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid, 4 for 31 for the tight end there. Keon Coleman, though, 5 for 70 with that touchdown, looking strong the last couple of weeks. And Khalil Shakir being the nice underneath guy, 9 for 107. So Mari Cooper did not bite into these guys' roles. In fact, Cooper's presence has led to the emergence of Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir here. So we've got is Shakir underneath and Keon Coleman going deep, and Amari just kind of drawing the defense's attention away from them. So, and then you add in Dalton Kincaid as well as James Cook out of the backfield, and this offense is looking nasty right now. So, in spite of the Bills losing to the Ravens on national TV a few weeks ago, the Bills offense is the one that's really looking good right now as a whole. I'm not going to downplay the Ravens because their offense is smoking as well. They did lose this week, but I look at those two teams along with Houston as the top contenders to try and knock the Chiefs off of their pedestal. So let's see here. We've got one more Sunday game. Where is it? Final Sunday game. Real ugly. Panthers at Denver. And what do we have to talk about here? Well, Bo Nix, not a bad day. 284 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. So finally, a day through the air that was very productive fantasy-wise for Bo Nix. Did add the touchdown on the ground, so an awesome day for Bo Nix. Cortland Sutton benefited from that. He's back 8 for 100. Adam Troutman getting into the end zone on National Tight End Day, 4 for 85. On the ground, it was Jaleel McLaughlin leading the way for the Broncos, 8 for 47. Javonte added 17 for 44. Over to the Panthers side, and it was Bryce Young back in action here, 24-37, 224, 2 picks, 2 touchdowns. So not a terrible day for Bryce Young. Chuba Hubbard, 15 for 56. He added 2 catches for 15 yards. The touchdowns went to Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker, who didn't have a bad afternoon, 4 for 78 there. But, you know, what are they thinking here in Carolina? I mean, are they going to bring Jonathan Brooks back into this mess, really? I don't know. I don't know what you do. Do you sit him out the remainder of the year? I think they have to decide because they opened the 21-day practice window, and I think he either has to play in this next game or they got to put him back on IR for the remainder of the year. So that'll be an interesting situation to follow this week, whether the Panthers decide to bring Jonathan Brooks into this mix or just sit him for the rest of the season. Because they definitely don't know what they're doing at quarterback. Bryce Young, yes, he looked all right, but they still lost 28-14 to the Broncos. Now, the Broncos have definitely been better than pretty much everybody projected this year. I mean, and that's honestly solely on the play of Bo Nix. He's been so solid. All right, back to the final one, and that is going all the way back to Thursday night, if you can remember, and the return back from the dead, Puka Nacua. If you watched social media all day Thursday, it was Puka might play. Puka's looking like he'll play. And then Puka did play. And then Puka performed as well. He didn't just take a few snaps. 7 for a 106. Man, if he had gotten into the end zone, he would have had a monster day. Cooper Kupp got a touchdown, 5 for 51. Demarcus Robinson, both catches, 4 touchdowns. So Matthew Stafford just dominated this game, 279, 4 touchdowns, did have an interception. But that Rams offense with Kupp and Puka back, look for Stafford to benefit from that going forward. And so if you need a quarterback, cheaper quarterback, Stafford is your guy to go after for sure. Kyron Williams added 97 yards on the ground, 5 catches for 19 yards and the touchdown there. So Kyron still got into the end zone with over 100 total yards. Sam Darnold on the other side had a little rough finish there. 240, 2 touchdowns, no picks for him, but got just thrown to the ground in the end zone to end any hope for the Vikings. Many thought it was a face mask, should have been called. So Vikings should have had a better attempt there at the end. Now, looking at the rest of the Vikings, you've got Looking at the rest of the Vikings, you got Justin Jefferson leading the way, of course, with 8 for 115. Didn't get into the end zone, but still a monster day for Justin Jefferson. Aaron Jones, 2 for 37 in the air, 58 yards on the ground. Josh Oliver getting into the end zone, had 2 for 30, and Trent Sherfield added the other touchdown for the Vikings. So all in all, it was a very interesting Sunday. We had a great return from the dead from the tight ends. Hopefully we'll see that going forward for all of you who have invested heavily into the tight end position. I was not one who heavily invested into Sam Laporta, as I have exactly 0 shares of him. But those of you who had Travis Kelce, especially George Kittle and Brock Bowers, those of you who waited on tight end, still went after a solid one. Evan Ingram, I still feel confident in. Jake Ferguson looked decent there as the number 2 option in Dallas. So those mid-range tight ends are performing for you. Dalton Kincaid got into the end zone. And Trey McBride had a monster day, which is good to see for the Cardinals offense going forward. Kyler getting over 300 yards there. So it looks like Kyler might be back. I don't know. But that's all we've got for you today. Thank you for joining. And we are going to be back tomorrow with more to talk about Dynasty Wise. Thank you for joining me in the Birdhouse. It's been plenty of fun. I'm out.